I'm Edie Lush and I'm here outside the Hub Culture Ice House. It's getting a little icy. I'm really pleased that Miroslav Lajcák has decided to join me here in the cold.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
President of the 72nd session of the General Assembly at the United Nations. Now, it's a pretty interesting time to be here in Davos. Pretty
Indeed.
interesting time to be at the United Nations as
Indeed.
well. Tell me what your thoughts are in this year's Davos. What's the general sentiment?
Well, Davos has become a real global actor and brings together what we call multi-stakeholders. That means governments, business sector, civic activists, media. So could help us at the General Assembly. And I also appreciate the fact that the theme of this year's Davos very much corresponds with the theme of the General Assembly, of our vision of the world, and that two issues which are among the priorities for this 72nd session of the General Assembly are prominently featured here, namely the Sustainable Development Goals and their implementation and the migration. So I'm really spending lots of my time promoting these two agendas.
So I'm impressed, actually. I've been doing interviews here for 9 years. The Millennium Development Goals got almost no interest. The Sustainable Development Goals have captured people's imagination,
Yes.
despite the fact that there are 17 of them. There's a whole lot of different parts of them. Why is that? Why do you think they are getting people's attention like the Millennium Development Goals didn't?
Well, I think the governments have learned the lesson that we were not particularly successful with the implementation of MDGs. And second, we have also found much better way to communicate those goals. So we have a number of important people, popular people, opinion makers, not only policy makers, behind those goals. And I'm pleased, I'm astonished in a positive way to see how many people speak about the SDGs. And they are much wider known and recognized. But this does not mean that we are on the safe track to deliver. We still have some issues to address, such as financing, for example.
So talk to me about that. Talk to me about how, what your focus is and where you think the world's attention needs to focus, particularly to get the SDGs through.
So as you said, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we have 193 countries that are supposed to implement them. Some of them are very keen and have turned these goals into their national strategies, and they really adjusted their program of their governments. Some others are less keen and even ignorant or less interested. So the progress is clearly there, but it's not even. And then the problems, as I see them, financing in the first place. We need some $3 trillion a year more than what we are currently giving into the SDGs. The money is there, but it's not linked to the implementation of SDGs. So we need to make them more commercially attractive for private sector, so that they don't see their participation as a charity drive, but as a business opportunity. That's very important. Young people, so they need to know, they need to identify themselves in these goals, and they need to be part of their implementation, because it's about transforming this planet to make it a better place by 2030, so young people have to have their say. So these are probably the two most important elements as I see them.
We aren't going to achieve that. Well, it doesn't matter what we do on any of the global goals unless we make sure that we keep the climate within the 1.5 degree limit. Some people say 2. We'll lose many island countries if we do that. How optimistic are you that we will, as a world, achieve what we need to on climate change?
The good thing is that we have a program, we have a commitment. The bad thing is that we are not delivering, not only to 1.5, but not even to 2%. So we've made a commitment to provide $100 billion a year for developing countries until 2020, and then $7 trillion a year until 2030. And the money is simply not there. So therefore, we will have a big review of the climate goals later this year, and I think that it will be a very sober statement of reality, which I hope will help us to serve as a wake-up call that we really need to invest much more into the climate change. Because, as I said, we said 2% a must, 1% a wish, but right now we are not there.
It's the year of the Global Compact of Migration. It's also been a 365 days in which migration, whether you talk about refugees or economic migration, has been in the news, and it has not been positive. We've seen the US as a government pull out of the Global Compact,
Yes.
yet it's one of the most important things.
Yes.
Migration is mentioned in 13 of the 17 development goals, sustainable development goals. We cannot have sustainable development without people having the ability to move around. Equally, there is fear that's met around the world when people who are different, who have different religions, who have different, who look different, they eat different things. How do you marry those two things, and what are you hoping for the Global Compact?
Well, I'm hoping that we will adopt it in July and then formally endorse in December. You know, it's the process that is taking place in the General Assembly. It will be the first ever multilateral document on migration. I hope that we will have a realistic and balanced document, because we need realism. And the realism says that migration is here to stay. We cannot ignore it. It's a global phenomenon that is going to increase rather than disappear. So we better learn to live with it, appreciate it, manage it, and use the positive aspects of it. And second, balance, because you have activistic approach and you have very restrictive approach. And again, there is a responsibility of countries, but there are rights of people on the move, and we need to find the right balance. Because believing that we can close our eyes to migration is naive. So we either use migration or we will be influenced by the negative aspects of migration. Therefore, well, at this point, I am cautiously optimistic. The process that has been taking place in the United Nations, in the General Assembly, has generated lots of understanding. There is a common sense of responsibility, and now we have to turn this positive atmosphere into a document. And I really hope that it will not be a legally binding document, but SDGs are not legally binding either, and yet they are the global umbrella for development. So I really hope that this document will be a global umbrella for managing migration.
Thank you so much for stopping by in the freezing cold outside the Ice House at Hub Culture, and I'm Edie Lush.
Thank you very much.